Hello, my dear boys and girls. How are you today? So, your first day of school at home again. So, for biology, we're going to start with a new chapter, namely ecology. So, as you can see, this will be about relations between organisms and the environment. So, last week you already did a laboratory about how the abiotic factors can influence the biotic factors. And that's what we'll be talking about the whole year, actually. So I just tell you biotic factors. What are that in Dutch? In Nederlands, biotische factoren. As you can hear of the name, biotic, like biology, it's about all living creatures, so everything that's alive. And what are then abiotic factors? These are the non-living factors that can influence the biotic factors. So that's to say, like the air that we breathe, the land that we stand on, the water we drink, the temperature, the radiation of the sun, everything around us that is not living, the rocks, the chairs, the non-living environment, actually. So you can follow your new bundeltje, your syllabus. Actually, it's all there in there. As always, there's after this chapter you should be able to blah, 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 blah. And then there's an introduction here with a little list, and then let's start with what is ecology actually. So I'll go and skip to my presentation. So ecology, if you look it up in a dictionary, it will say the science, so it's a science, it's part of biology, which is also a science actually, that studies the relations between the air, the land, the water, the plants, etc. And usually this is just a particular area, dus een klein stukje, dus niet de hele wereld, zeg maar. So let's zoom into this. What can this be? What are relations? It's not like relationships that you're kissing with this guy or girl. Well, it can be, but it's not always like that. But let's see some examples here. For instance, you can have food relations. So we can have a fox eating a rabbit. But it can also be rabbits fighting each other for having the dominance of the group. So all kinds of relations. It can be water lilies using the water to float on, using the sun to grow. It can be that they're all closing in the water. It can really be all kinds of stuff. Deer fighting because of the ladies or because of food. Or it can be if you see this, well, I think you all know that there's a climate change happening, a global climate change, and that you can see that we humans, the living organisms, we influence the climate, the non-living environment, and by doing so, this non-living environment, the abiotic factors, we change the habitat of other living organisms. So, for instance, the polar bears, they don't have enough habitat anymore to live. So, if you were to divide ecology into two main groups, you have the interactions or the relations between organisms themselves, as we saw, so only in the living part, so only the biotic factors. So these were food relations, dominance, cooperation, competition, and so on. And on the other hand, you have organisms and their environment. So they're always influencing each other. So you have the biotic and the abiotic factors influencing each other. Okay. We have certain levels of organization in ecology. Let's say you will graduate from school. You will go studying biology, of course, because it's the most interesting stuff that you can study. So, and you graduate as a biologist, as an ecologist, and you go to Africa, or in this case, you go to, let's say, Sweden, and you want to study ecology. So you find one deer, you find this, if you're going to study the deer, this is actually the level of an individual. So just one deer, so you can study its behavior, you can study what he or she eats, stuff like that. But of course, the behavior of one deer, it's influenced by other deer. So you're going to look at the population. What's a population? The population means all the deer in one park. So it's a group of one species in a certain area. So no other species, just one species. So for instance, maybe there's another group of deer that says, "Ho ho, no, you can't come here. This is our place. This is our territory. So you go somewhere else." Maybe the males will be fighting over the group dominance. Who knows? But then you think about it and you say, no, we have to look at the bigger picture here. It's not only the population, but there are maybe there's not enough food. There's not enough hiding spaces here, so there are not enough trees. And also there's maybe a predator nearby. There are other animals influencing the territory. So you're going to look at the level of the community. In Nederlands, de gemeenschap, de levensgemeenschap. So what's the community? This is all the organisms at a certain area or in a certain area influencing each other. So these can also be bacteria, fungi, viruses, stuff like that, because look at us like now, we're influenced very, very much by the coronavirus, for instance. So it's not just, we don't live at ourselves, not only one species. You're always influencing each other, even not always on purpose, like we just live, but by living with so many people, we're influencing, we have influence on a lot of other living creatures. But maybe, and not only maybe, but there's even a bigger level of organization or a bigger picture. That's the ecosystem, het ecosysteem in Nederlands. And that's not only the biotic factors, but you also take into account the abiotic factors. So you're going to look at, is there water flowing? Are there mountains? Is the air coming from this or that direction? Is the wind blowing rains onto the land? So you're taking into account everything. Actually, this is the cool level of organization to look at, but it can be very, very, very complex. So we're going to look deeper into this in this first chapter. So this is actually the division in the chapters for this year, ecology. So first we're going to look at the level of the ecosystem. That's this chapter. Next we're going to look at the population level, so interspecific relations. And then we're going to look at the community level, which are, this is community is interspecific, population is intraspecific. We'll see later. Okay, so then you have two levels that are even bigger, even greater. You can look at the level of the biome. What's a biome? In Nederlands een biome of een vegetatiegordel. Maybe you've seen this in geography. So we have big places on Earth that have more or less the same climate. So more or less the same plants will grow there. So again, more or less the same animals will be there. So that's one biome. So we have very, very big biomic systems, or just biomes. And then the biggest level is the biosphere, in Dutch the biosphere. And that's actually everywhere on this planet where there's life possible. This is actually the most inclusive picture that you can get, but it's kind of difficult to investigate that, because then you have to take into account everything that's on this earth. But well, that's actually what's happening. So okay, let's move on. So a few examples of how biotic factors can influence abiotic factors, because it's in two ways. They can influence each other. So if you see beavers, they can influence the shape of the rivers, because they make the word grote dammen. I'll come to it later, I'm sorry. Which holds the water and which can create gigantic floods, actually. So they really have a big influence on the ecosystem. Same actually for earthworms, because they're in the ground, they're molding up the ground, and they make the ground very aerated. So they make it ze veroorzaken eigenlijk, ze maken dat er veel water in de grond kan, dat die veel luchtiger wordt. I'm sorry for and I'm not saying everything 100% correct, but it can also be the other way around, that abiotic factors, they can influence the biotic factors. So for instance, the weather or the climate, it determines which animals and which plants live in certain places or certain areas. So as you can see, the fennec or the desert fox, these only live in the desert places, and penguins, they only live in very cold areas. So they're really adapted to the abiotic factors. Or for instance, also the flowers, as the sunflowers, they move with the sun, so they're also influenced by the weather or the sun. Okay, so that's just the basic, the theory. So now it's up to you. We've talked about this, page 28, so try to fill this in, to complete this. We've also talked about the levels of organization. If you want a recap, or even more properly explained, you can scan these QR codes and try to fill in the correct words here in the levels of organization. Then some extra ecology terms. A biotope, these are actually all the abiotic factors of an ecosystem. A habitat is the place, is a certain place or certain factors in the biotope that are actually optimal for the organisms to live in. And then you have the niche. That's the function of an organism in this habitat. So mainly we talk about the food. So for instance, the niche of a shark is to eat fish, to eat seals, and so on. But for instance, it can also be, if you look at a squirrel, an ecology, the niche can be that it searches for nuts, for foods, it hides them, and so it disperses all the seed, actually. And it's also, it's food for other animals, namely the fox. And it's also a competition for other animals that eat nuts, okay? So, some examples for you to do. Let's start easy. Are these factors biotic or abiotic? So were they alive or were they never alive? Do they consist of carbon material or not? Zijn er koolstofverbindingen of niet? Exercise 2. Is it physics? Zijn de factoren fysisch of chemisch? Gewoon in een kleurtje. And then exercise 3. Try to look up the biotope, habitat and niche of the following animals. And you choose one for yourself, one that you can find in Belgium, in the wild. So no house cat or anything, please. And then you can skip page 32. We're going to do that next week. And please try to already fill in the vocabulary list, because voilà. And that's your task for today. Okay, so thank you, see you next time, and good luck with it. If you have any questions, just mail me or ask me. And now I'm going to try to close it. Voila, bye bye.